그냥 많이 썼죠 뭐.
It's tough. It's tough work.
That's a shortened version of a longer piece that Jake Ward put together. Jake joins me now. Jake, good morning. Thanks for joining us so early in the morning on your coast. This San Francisco system means police are often not summoned to certain calls that originate with 911. Let's talk about the ones into which police continue to be summoned and brought to the scene. What's the latest thinking on making sure that those also don't escalate into something that didn't need to happen?
Well, this is really, the great problem of the nation's, policing crisis here, Ali, right, is that there is not a consistent set of principles, of guidelines, for police departments across the country. I mean, you have to remember, right, police departments are essentially each their own kingdom. They have to obviously obey constitutionality, and they also have to obey state and regional laws. But in terms of training and procedure, each one is its own semi-improvisational little arena, and as a result we don't have a good central, let's say, federal database of how many use of force incidents are there, how many police involved shootings are there, what kinds of patterns are there behind those instances, right? We couldn't, for instance, right now snap a finger and look through a database and say, okay, of the people who have in fact escalated a situation such that someone does in fact die, how many of them, worked the night shift too many nights, or came up through this kind of training program, or were paired with a partner who was junior like they were, or whatever it is, right? We don't have systems like that. And so this system in San Francisco seems to be working. It's very, very interesting to watch people drawn away from 911. Those calls come into 911 as per usual, but this team goes out, has all kinds of authorities that police typically are the only ones who have, and suddenly, for us, the statistics have been extraordinary. I mean, it's a really amazing thing to see. But in the rest of the country, Ali, it is a very improvisational game, and police have a lot of authority. They are the first and last call on most of these subjects.
Jake, stay with me for a moment. I want to bring in someone you know, Chief Simon Pang. He's the Section Chief of Community Paramedicine for the San Francisco Fire Department. He's been leading this effort to build the street crisis response teams about which we are just talking. Chief, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. I saw in Jake's story that these teams go out with a peer counselor, a behavioral expert, and an EMT or a paramedic, so that in fact you cover a large percentage of the reason why 911 gets called on people.
That's correct. Each street crisis response team is comprised of 3 individuals. The peer support specialist, who is someone who has lived experience, somebody who may have formerly been homeless or is in recovery. And we feel that having someone there increases our credibility. My opinion is it's the gold standard for trauma-informed care. It's truly someone who has walked in their shoes before. The behavioral clinician can either be a licensed clinical social worker, a psychologist, or a marriage and family therapist. And then the third piece is the piece from the fire department, which is a community paramedic. And a community paramedic is a paramedic with extra training and an expanded role with skills in motivational interviewing, de-escalation techniques, and crisis response.
And 1 in 5 fatal police encounters, by the way, in the United States is, according to the Journal of Preventive Medicine, tied to issues of mental health or substance abuse. These teams you put together, Captain, sound amazing, Chief. What escalates it? What is the point at which that team can't deal with something, and then what happens? Do you have instances where you've dispatched this team, but they've had to call police?
Yes, that's a very good question, and it's a very complex topic. We are not law enforcement, and we are currently dispatched on what's called Priority B calls. So that's someone who is nonviolent, has no report of a weapon, and who has not committed a crime. So we'll go on those calls, and if we feel that the person is escalating to a point that it's becoming dangerous to our teams, we're going to provide time and space. We're going to back off, and we will ask for law enforcement backup. So this is, law enforcement is still part of the equation, and I think necessarily so. But the police in San Francisco, all the officers are crisis intervention trained, and we've been cooperating very well on the street level.
What about the other way around? Are there instances where police get dispatched by 911, arrive at a scene where maybe it is a non-violent, non-threatening mental health issue or a substance abuse issue? Are they able to get your teams in?
Yes, well, we are still in our implementation phase, so we don't have, currently we only have 3 units in the street. Our 4th unit will be up and running on May 10th, and by June, end of June, we should have a total of 6 units up. When we have 6 units up, we will be able to have a police officer special call us to the scene if they feel that we can be a benefit to their call. At the moment, just because the police leadership don't want their officers waiting on scene for us to arrive because we're not fully implemented yet. So it's just that in a few months that we're going to have complete interchangeability. The police officer will be able to call us to the scene. And also, I have to say that for those priority A calls, the ones that have maybe a hostage situation, a barricaded subject, or someone who is threatening to jump, we would not be involved in those. There is another team run through the health department called Comprehensive Crisis that responds to those, and they have trained negotiators on that team. So we really are focused on people who are nonviolent.
This is a remarkable story. Jake Ward, thank you for bringing it to us. Chief, thank you for bringing it to us. And thanks to your team. I'd like to keep a very close eye on this in May when you get your next team and when you get fully staffed up to 6 teams to see whether this is the kind of thing that the nation can emulate in dealing with so many of the calls that end up in such tragedy across the country. Jake Ward, NBC's reporter in Oakland, California. Chief Simon Pang is the Section Chief of Community Paramedicine at the San Francisco Fire Department. What a fascinating conversation. All right, coming up next, I'm going to introduce you to another type of rescue program, but this one tries to save